Dauntless is a free-to-play game where you hunt monsters.
It's a Monster Hunter clone. Monster Hunter's way better. Where's the gun, Lance?
I'm happy to see a free-to-play MMO that has no player-versus-player combat, because that's a nice change of pace given the current—
There's not enough monsters to hunt. Why isn't there any blocking?
Ah, fuck me. Alright, listen. If you draw the line in the sand and say that this game is just a shitty clone of Monster Hunter, then there's not much input I can provide for you. But for everyone else, Dauntless is a free-to-play game where, yes, you hunt monsters. And I was so excited to play this game. It was well worth the wait, and that says a lot because at launch, there was a 2-hour queue to even start the game. And this was due to the sheer amount of people trying to log into the servers. Like, we were looking at big boy numbers. It's also worth noting that the game wasn't even on Steam. Now, I was going to go into a rant about an early game bug that would trap you in the instance, forcing you to log out and then get back into the incredibly long line to play, but that was quickly patched out, and the developers, Phoenix Labs, had some of the fastest and fully transparent responses to community outreach I've ever seen. So I'm calling it par for the course on launch, simply because I've never witnessed such competence regarding public relations, especially from the creators of a free-to-play game. Now I'm giving you forewarning. There's going to be a lot of parts in this video where I get very upset, but let the record show that I do heavily recommend this game to anyone that seems slightly interested in it. Alright, so Dauntless starts out with you getting thrown out of a literal space ship into a moderately sized floating landscape, which can somehow support not only dense flora and fauna, but also a large creature called a behemoth, which is a really ambitious name for enemies that really vary from sorta big to quite large. I personally couldn't see myself calling any of these animals behemoths, unless I was blatantly trying to avoid the word monster. Are you satisfied now, you demon powder sniffing twats? Either way, your task is to murder the alpha predator in the wildlife to assert your dominance, which when you first start out is pretty damn satisfying. But if you don't really want to go out and hit the scary monster right away, then feel free to pick up various flowers until you grow a set of balls. Eventually, after fighting a few monsters, you get to the main city, which is a moderately sized floating landscape. Here's a spoiler alert for those who haven't caught on. Every single map is a chunk of space rock infused with some magical levitation, which I assume was the byproduct of desperately wanting to put actual space ships in your game. All these maps also look the best when standing at the edge of a cliff, and no, that's not a joke. What I'm trying to say is that the landscape looks much better from further away, where you can get a better appreciation for the style and color palette. Because if you stare at the textures up close, they can get muddy at times, but once you get to a spot when you can see everything from a distance, everything looks much more pleasant. And look at the sky, dude, that is so pretty. But then again, it's also silly to get hung up on physics, topography, and the overall artistic thought process of the graphic designers when I'm ripping this elephant-sized lizard to shreds with my chain blades, cause haha, I'm a pussy. Had I known beforehand that the one weapon I would enjoy would be an omnipresent meme hanging over the entire way I decided to play the game, then I would still use the chain blades because they are fucking sick. Actually, let's go over the weapons real fast. We got the sword, which I hate using because you started out with it. You do slashy stuff, it's a sword. Then we got the hammer, which is also a gun. And then we got the pike, which is also a gun. And we got the axe, and that's for people with hair on their chest. It hits like a semi going the speed of sound at the cost of rendering your character completely immobile while you're powering up your swing. All of these weapons have 2 attacks, a small combo, and a meter for its special move. As of making this video, every single weapon in the game has the same exact dodge roll animation except for the chain blades, which lets you dodge with a dash. Plus, its special meter is a movement ability and not an attack, which makes them the most mobile weapons in the game, but you also get labeled as a scared princess that does about as much damage as a paper cut. I digress, but you get every single weapon and armor from killing the behemoth and using its parts as the materials, which I absolutely love, killing an enemy and then wearing its body as armor. That's just like one of the coolest things to me ever. So let's move on to the behemoths themselves. Most of the lower level enemies like the Gnasher, Embermane, and the Quillshot all look like dinosaurs mixed with other animals. And then there's Shrike, which looks kinda like a pissed off chamois owl. As you progress further in the game, you'll notice that some of the new behemoths share a lot of qualities with the older behemoths, which made me separate them into 3 categories: lizards, birds, and dogs. The hardest of which to fight by far is the dogs, because they are way too fast, especially when you get to Electric Boy Stormclaw over here. See, the bulk of this game is centered around learning the enemy's attack patterns until you find out how to exploit the openings before and after each attack animation. But Lightning Dick Doggo over here dashes in gigantic circles, putting walls up so you can't get to him, making the fight last way longer than it should. On top of that, if you get shocked, you can't revive or drink a health pot, so there's a strong possibility of getting wiped out early by some fuckboy hitboxes. There's other basic status effects that have an easy to grasp concept, like fire is hot and ice is cold, but there are also some pretty inventive ones, like a swarm of insects that prevent you from countering until they leave. Eventually they just start throwing reskins at you, like, oh, here's an ice version of the bird, and here's a fire version of the lizard, but they still give you different weapon and armor sets that each have a unique stat boost and aesthetic, aside from the ones that look exactly the same as the ones you've already unlocked. You can further upgrade your weapons and armor using cells, which is where those loot boxes come in. Oh yeah, because face it, if you don't have a loot box in your free-to-play game, then you might as well quit being a game developer and start shaking a cup at the pedestrians that are walking away from you, because that would be more profitable. Having these randomly generated power-ups gives you as little control as possible when trying to optimize your character with the preferred upgrades. And let's face it, once you get to the big boy monsters, everyone's just gonna want you to have max healing. Because surprise, surprise, living is pretty important. And I have spent a considerable amount of time playing this game. It's by no means pay to win, but I still haven't gotten the necessary cells to provide said healing. So not only am I using the chain blades, which makes me a little bitch, but I'm pretty terrible at support too, seeing as how at the very moment I'm running max break parts, so once their legs or tail or face gets cut into ribbons, I'm basically half as effective. In fact, the only thing that my character is really good at is cutting the parts off themselves, and that is a huge problem because if your party dies and loses the hunt, then you get absolutely nothing and wasted the last 10 to 15 minutes of your time. And you can make a fair and reasonable argument on why it's better to not make any progress from a failed hunt by saying that people would just get the parts they need and then leave, but I am going to counter that argument saying that if I spend 15 minutes completely dissecting a monster only for my party to die and leave me to solo fight an enemy scaled for 4 people, then I should at least get a consolation prize for my efforts. This becomes extremely frustrating when you're trying to fight the emo crow and this disco dragonfly. Shroud and Rezakiri are the 2 special behemoths that are easily the best part of this game, and these guys do not fuck around. Like, Shroud can make copies of himself and make you practically blind when he goes into rage mode, and the first time you fight him, you're like, wow, this moveset seems unfair. Like this massive fucking wing that can swipe almost completely around him, but that is nothing in the comparison to this light show of death that Rezakiri brings to the table. Look at this ungodly display of spam trash. It will quickly become apparent that you need to be fully prepared for this battle or die a miserable death. So stock up on your Ironhide tunics and other support items. Oh god, I just noticed that I didn't even go over what those are. Alright, so remember when I was saying how you could pick up flowers? Well, it turns out that those potions and other special support items are crafted with all this shit that you find on the ground. And you damn well better make sure you're picking that shit up, because items take different amounts of multiple materials. So you might have 50 flowers, but only have 3 rocks. So in reality, you can't craft a damn thing unless you go back and fight the same monsters you've already beaten, because again, you can't just pick up the flowers and leave. That would be terrible. And I might just be acting like an asshole, but why don't I get to leave my solo hunt after I collect my mushrooms and blue rocks? It's a one-man fight. I have no responsibility to anyone else, so the argument of if you leave, you're letting your team down, that doesn't work. Sure, you could say how collecting the materials and not actually killing the behemoth is boring and defeating the purpose of the game, but then why the fuck are we in the position to have this argument in the first place? Plus, weapon and armor starts having different types of arcanite and require different parts of the behemoth that you got the weapon from, so even if I didn't have to pull virtual weeds from this chunk of space rock, I would still have to fight the same enemy enemy multiple times. Each weapon and piece of armor gets all the way to plus 10, so if you're lucky, you're going to have to play the same instance 10 to 15 times, and if you're really lucky, you can get an exotic, but I'll go over that bullshit later. And you know what? Fuck it. While I'm pissed off, I want to know why I can't kill all the little creatures running around. These are immortal beings impervious to any damage. These fucking animals are the real threat to the ecosystem. Look at this thing. It's just standing on the building like it owns the place. No one knows how it got there. I guarantee you it doesn't know how to get down, but the point I'm making is that he wouldn't be stuck on the damn roof if I was able to murder it for food. Allowing you to kill the smaller animals in the game for material also would be a perfect opportunity to make you grind even longer, while also making it feel like you're an actual hunter instead of a heavily equipped behemoth exterminator that picked up gardening as a hobby. Oh god, I'm gonna get pissed off again. So at the end of the game, before you even start fighting the big monsters, the ones that I said were the best part and so fun, you're forced to kill every behemoth in the last area 5 times. And that is a huge time sink in itself, but you also have to upgrade your weapons and armor until your character has a specific attack and defense. But on top of that, once you get to the minimum attack and defense level, you'll realize that you're not even equipped enough to fight these monsters, because these fucking guys will kill you in 2 hits. Now, most players at the end of the game combined that little piece of information with the fact that if you fail a hunt, the entire party leaves with absolutely nothing, so they started leaving parties with people that didn't have the best armor or weapons. So imagine trying to play Dauntless for 20 or 30 hours to get to the best part of the game just to be told nobody wants to party with you anymore, forcing you into this purgatory of fighting a monster that, let's face it, kicks the ever-loving shit out of you until eventually you get some really nice people with full shroud armor and tragic echo helmets that will mollywop the socks off of this ridiculous crow in 5 minutes, making you feel less than useless. So how do you fix this problem? I don't know, maybe by cutting up some of the many layers of repetition. And if you want a good example of what I mean by layers of repetition, I suggest starting this video over every time I get to this sentence. And if you don't want to do that, then don't worry, I'll explain further by finally talking about these exotic items. As of making this video, it is my understanding that every exotic item is dropped randomly during a fight, and that's not a drop for the party. No, that is a drop specifically for you. But just being lucky enough to get the item and kill the monster isn't enough. You also have to craft it afterwards. Now I'm gonna go over just the tragic echo helmet because that's the one I've got. This piece of armor requires you to break parts off of a behemoth while it's in its red glowy Super Saiyan mode called Rage, which honestly sounds simple enough, but those drops are also random. So assuming you play perfectly and get 3 of the 4 parts you need in one hunt, the 4th part in question to make a tragic echo is called the Corrupted Dark Tail, and you can only get it from breaking the tail of Shroud, the second hardest monster, while he's in rage mode. And yes, this is the monster that turns your screen black the entirety of the time that he's in rage mode. And yes, I also said second hardest because Disco Dragonfly's moveset is this game's way of saying, fuck you, get good, scrub. Long story short, I've accomplished the task of cutting off Shroud's tail while he's in rage a grand total of 3 times and got exactly 0 corrupted dark tails. So the exotic item I acquired over a month ago still sits in the armor smith's shop, not able to be crafted. Did I mention I really do enjoy this game? Like, no, seriously, I know I bitched for like over 5 minutes, but the combat is so fun, and it's such a wonderful feeling when you actually kill the last 2 behemoths.
Yes! Yes! Fuck yeah! Yes! Oh, it's every monster. Fuck.
Unfortunately, there is one more problem people have, and that's the lack of content, which is padded by grinding that I explained earlier. But I stand firm on the belief that eventually this game will have enough content to rival other games in this specific genre.
This will never be as good as Monster Hunter.
Fuck off. I understand I nitpicked a lot, but I wouldn't even know half the stuff I complained about if the game didn't keep my interest for hours on end. I'm more than willing to fight the same monster over and over as long as I get rewarded just a little bit after each hunt. And please stop having 7 different NPCs leading to the same cash shop. Look at this. This is 3 kiosks right next to each other, sending you to the same place. I was also going to go in depth on the new patch and how it was disappointing to have to fight all 5 of the slightly upgraded old monsters just to lead up to this underwhelmingly easy fight with the new behemoth that could easily be a mid-game monster and feels very out of place considering I even knew the old monster's attack animations by heart, yet still had a more difficult time killing them than this tiny insignificant stain, while also stating my disappointment for the fact that the new monster doesn't even have a heroic version yet. However, instead I'm going to end this video by saying that if Dauntless is able to stick around long enough to give the players a more substantial endgame, then it would be a huge success and a staple in free-to-play gaming as a whole. I'm excited for the new behemoths, I'm excited for new weapons and armor, and I'm willing to wait patiently until Phoenix Labs is able to give Dauntless all of the content it deserves to have, and I know they'll do it right given enough time. This game's like a little itty-bitty baby in the free-to-play world right now. You gotta wait for it to grow up, guys. Feel free to talk about your experience with Dauntless in the comments. Like, subscribe, Discord, fuck the bell icon. You guys know the drill. But most importantly, have a wonderful day. Peace out.